The Egyptians believed the most significant thing you could do in your life was die. But my hair looks fucking shit. Before Snapchat, hills were the most efficient way to distribute dick pics to a wide audience. Pompeii was so advanced it had its own volcano, which is Latin for angry hill. Yet despite all this attention to detail, a quick inspection of his back half reveals he doesn't have an anus. As well as boring, these are also shit by today's standards. But do we know if he came out? Or like just the same as an average man? Like about a tablespoon. Mother Teresa said give, but give until it hurts. Which is possibly the sexiest thing a nun's ever said. Luckily it wasn't long until a charity came along with a name it was very easy to say. Comic relief, and who thought it was Ein Lord of Scheiße, was German thinker Karl Marx. It's hard to tell, but if you look closely at this photograph, you might notice he had a beard. By unveiling the controversial poll tax, a tax some people call Pole, and they were furious. Usher changed its name to Ussel, or sometimes study his complete works. And here in this garden in Kent, Darwin saw an apple fall from a tree and wondered if there was a monkey up there. I'm entering a cave, not by mistake or because I'm a wolf. Here comes the hot sniper, I'm the lyrical cancer.
Cunk on Law. Philomena Cunk passes the bar exam. Episode 1, Family Law. Introduction. Scene opens with Philomena Cunk standing in front of a courthouse. Philomena Cunk: hello, I'm Philomena Cunk, and today I'm taking on the Herculean task of passing the Washington State Bar exam. They say knowledge is power, but in my case, it's more like knowledge is a mild electric shock. Anyway, I've heard this bar exam is quite important, especially if you want to become a lawyer, which I might, or I might not. Who knows? Life's full of surprises. Scene shifts to Philomena sitting in a library, surrounded by law books. Philomena: now, I've learned that the bar exam is a bit like a buffet. There's a smorgasbord of legal topics to choose from. But today, I've decided to focus on family law. After all, families are like the glue that holds society together, or maybe the duct tape, sticky, slightly dysfunctional, but still managing to keep things from falling apart. Scene cuts to Philomena walking down a street, gesturing at a couple arguing. Philomena: family law covers everything from marriage and divorce to child custody and adoption. It's a bit like a soap opera, but with more paperwork and fewer evil twins. And just like a soap opera, it's full of drama, heartache, and occasionally, a happy ending. Scene shifts to Philomena standing next to a wedding cake in a bakery. Philomena: let's start with marriage, which is like a roller coaster that you can't get off once you've strapped in, unless you pay a hefty fee and fill out a mountain of forms. In Washington state, there are rules about who can get married, like age requirements, licensing, and solemnization, which sounds like something out of a horror movie, but I'm told it's actually quite romantic. Scene cuts to Philomena sitting in a park, watching children play. Philomena: then there's the issue of children. When people decide to make a smaller version of themselves, they often don't realize that they are signing up for a lifetime of responsibility, or at least until the child turns 18 and starts making their own questionable life choices. Family law helps navigate the stormy seas of child custody, child support, and paternity, which is like trying to solve a puzzle while blindfolded and standing on one leg. Scene changes to Philomena standing outside an adoption agency. Philomena, adoption and foster care are also part of family law, and they're like a game of musical chairs. Sometimes there are more chairs than children, and sometimes there are more children than chairs. It's a delicate dance, and the rules and procedures can be as complex as the steps of the tango. Scene shifts to Philomena in a dimly lit room, holding a candle. Philomena, finally, we have the dark side of family law, domestic violence and protection orders. This is the part where family law steps in to protect people from harm and put a stop to the cycle of violence. It's a serious issue, and it reminds us that sometimes, families can be more like a house of cards than a solid fortress. Scene returns to Philomena standing in front of the courthouse. Philomena, so, join me, Philomena Cunk, as I delve into the labyrinth of family law in my quest to pass the Washington State Bar exam. Will I succeed? Will I fail? Who knows? But one thing's for sure, it's going to be a wild ride. Philomena, so, join me, Philomena Cunk, as I delve into the labyrinth of family law in my quest to pass the Washington State Bar exam. Will I succeed? Will I fail? Who knows? But one thing's for sure, it's going to be a wild ride. Scene transitions to Philomena standing in front of a wedding chapel. Philomena, first, let's explore the magical world of marriage, which is like an enchanted garden filled with rainbows and fairy dust, and occasionally, a packet of crisps that someone left behind after a drunken night out. Scene cuts to Philomena in a library, flipping through a law book. Philomena, in Washington State, there are certain requirements for a valid marriage. One of the most important is age. You see, they want to make sure you're old enough to make the monumental decision of tying the knot and promising to share your life, your home, and your Netflix password with another human being. Scene transitions to Philomena sitting in a pub, sipping a pint. Philomena, I spoke to a bloke at the pub, and he told me that in Washington State, you must be at least 18 years old to get married without parental consent. If you're between 17 and 18, you need parental permission, and if you're 16 or younger, you will need both parental permission and the approval of a judge, who probably has better things to do than decide whether two starry-eyed teenagers should be allowed to tie the knot. Scene shifts to Philomena interviewing a family law expert, Professor Jane Smith. Philomena, I'm here with Professor Jane Smith, an expert in family law. So, Professor, what are some other requirements for a valid marriage in Washington State? Professor Smith, well, Philomena, another key requirement is that both parties must willingly consent to the marriage. You can't force someone to marry you, even if you think you'd make a lovely couple. Philomena laughs. I suppose that means I'll have to give up my dream of marrying Prince Harry, then. Scene cuts to Philomena standing next to a table displaying various types of crisps. Philomena, now, you might think that getting married is as easy as picking your favorite flavor of crisps, but there's a bit more to it than that. In Washington State, you'll also need a marriage license, which is like a golden ticket granting you entry into the magical world of matrimony. Scene shifts to Philomena and Professor Smith sitting in a park, watching couples walk by. Philomena, Professor Smith, can you tell us more about the process of obtaining a marriage license? Professor Smith, certainly, Philomena. To get a marriage license in Washington State, the couple must apply together at a county auditor's office. There's a 3-day waiting period before the license becomes valid, and then it's good for 60 days. The couple must have their marriage solemnized within those 60 days or they'll need to apply for a new license. Philomena, solemnized. That sounds rather serious. I always thought weddings were supposed to be fun, with lots of dancing, cake, and embarrassing speeches. Professor Smith chuckles. Solemnization just means that the marriage ceremony is performed by an authorized officiant, like a judge, religious leader, or a licensed wedding celebrant. It's a necessary step to make the marriage legally binding. Scene transitions to Philomena standing next to a wedding cake. Philomena, well, there you have it, a brief and not at. Philomena, well, there you have it, a brief and not at all confusing look at the requirements for a valid marriage in Washington state. From age restrictions to licensing and solemnization, it's a veritable obstacle course of love and legalities. Scene transitions to Philomena sitting at a table with a stack of legal documents. Philomena, now, some people like to add a little extra spice to their nuptial arrangements with premarital agreements, also known as prenups. These are like a relationship insurance policy, outlining how assets and debts will be divided in case the marriage ends up going the way of the dodo bird. Scene shifts to Philomena interviewing a divorce attorney. Philomena, I'm here with divorce attorney, John Doe, to discuss the ins and outs of premarital agreements. So, John, are prenups just for the rich and famous, or can regular folks like me get in on the action? John Doe, actually, Philomena, premarital agreements can be useful for people of all income levels. They can help protect individual assets, clarify financial rights and responsibilities during the marriage, and simplify the divorce process if it comes to that. Scene cuts to Philomena standing in front of a couple holding hands. Philomena, but what about couples who don't want to go through the rigmarole of a traditional marriage? Enter common law marriage and domestic partnerships. While Washington state doesn't recognize common law marriages, it does have domestic partnerships, which provide some legal protections and benefits for unmarried couples. Scene transitions to Philomena and Professor Smith sitting on a park bench. Philomena, Professor Smith, can you explain the difference between a domestic partnership and a common law marriage? Professor Smith, of course, Philomena. A common law marriage is a marriage that's considered legally valid even without a formal ceremony or license. Based on the mentioned earlier, Washington state doesn't recognize common law marriages. On the other hand, a domestic partnership is a legally recognized relationship between two people who live together and share a domestic life but are not married. In Washington state, domestic partnerships provide some of the same legal protections as marriage, such as inheritance rights and hospital visitation privileges. Philomena, so it's like having your cake and eating it too, without having to share it with someone else at a big, fancy party. Scene fades to Philomena standing in front of a row of wedding dresses. Philomena, so, whether you're planning a grand wedding with all the trimmings, entering into a domestic partnership, or just contemplating a packet of crisps, family law has got you covered. Stay tuned for more adventures in legal learning as I, Philomena Cunk, continue my quest to pass the Washington State Bar exam. Scene fades out. Philomena, as we delve into the labyrinth of love and legality known as marriage, it's hard not to take a moment to ponder the peculiarities of this age-old institution. After all, marriage has been around longer than sliced bread, which is really saying something when you consider how much we Brits love our toast and Marmite. Scene transitions to Philomena in a bridal shop, trying on a wedding veil. Philomena, the concept of marriage can seem a bit bonkers when you think about it. I mean, you're essentially agreeing to share your life, your home, and your deepest, darkest secrets with another person, all while arguing over who gets to hold the TV remote and why the toothpaste cap is always left off. Scene shifts to Philomena sitting in a pub, chatting with a bloke at the bar. Philomena: so, what's your take on marriage, mate? Bloke: well, Philomena, I reckon it's a bit like a packet of crisps. Sometimes it's all crunchy and satisfying, but other times you're left with nothing but crumbs and disappointment. Scene cuts to Philomena standing outside a picturesque church. Philomena: but despite the occasional hiccups and heartache, marriage has endured through the centuries, morphing and adapting to fit the needs of each new generation. Some people say it's because humans are hardwired to crave companionship, while others believe it's because the government loves a good tax break. Scene transitions to Philomena interviewing a married couple on a park bench. Philomena: what do you think is the secret to a successful marriage? Husband: communication, compromise, and a healthy dose of laughter. Wife: and remembering to put the toilet seat down, of course. Scene cuts to Philomena holding a microphone, addressing a group of elderly couples celebrating their golden wedding anniversaries. Philomena: you lot have been married for 50 years, that's half a century of bickering over who left the milk out and whose turn it is to do the dishes. What keeps you going? Elderly woman: true love, my dear. And a really comfortable pair of earplugs. Scene fades to Philomena sitting on a park bench, contemplating marriage. Philomena: perhaps the most amusing aspect of marriage is how it brings out the best and the worst in people. There's something undeniably comical about watching a pair of lovebirds transform from starry-eyed sweethearts to squabbling spouses over the course of a few years, or even a few months. Scene transitions to Philomena standing in front of a wedding chapel. Philomena: but in the end, marriage is a peculiarly human endeavor, a messy, unpredictable, and often hilarious roller coaster ride that's as much about personal growth as it is about partnership. So whether you're a hopeless romantic or a cynical skeptic, it's hard not to find some humor in this strange and storied tradition. Scene cuts to Philomena raising a glass of champagne in a toast. Philomena: so here's to marriage, the ultimate comedy of errors. May we continue to laugh, love, and learn as we navigate the minefield of matrimony. And don't forget to put the toilet seat down. Scene fades out. Scene opens with Philomena standing in front of a family law court. Philomena: in the thrilling world of family law, one topic that never fails to entertain is divorce and legal separation. You see, when Cupid's arrow misses its mark, or the flame of passion sputters and dies, couples often find themselves navigating the choppy waters of heartbreak and legal proceedings. Scene transitions to Philomena leafing through a book on divorce laws. Philomena: now, there are various grounds for divorce and legal separation, ranging from the mundane, like irreconcilable differences, to the more dramatic, like adultery or abuse. Of course, some people might argue that having to share a bathroom with your spouse is grounds for divorce in and of itself. Scene shifts to Philomena sitting in a pub, chatting with a bloke at the bar. Philomena: so, what's your take on divorce and legal separation, mate? Bloke: well, Philomena, I reckon it's a bit like opening a disappointing packet of crisps. You thought you were getting cheese and onion, but you ended up with prawn cocktail. Sometimes you just have to cut your losses and move on to a better snack. Scene cuts to Philomena interviewing a family law expert. Philomena: could you enlighten us on how property is divided during a divorce or legal separation? Expert: certainly, Philomena. In most cases, property acquired during the marriage is considered marital or community property, and it's typically divided equally between the spouses. This can include assets like real estate, vehicles, and even debts. Scene transitions to Philomena playfully pretending to saw a car in half. Philomena, of course, splitting everything right down the middle isn't always practical or fair, which is why divorcing couples often find themselves embroiled in heated battles over who gets the house, the dog, or that priceless collection of commemorative thimbles. Scene cuts to Philomena speaking with a divorcee in a coffee shop. Philomena, what was the most unexpected thing about going through a divorce? Divorcee, honestly, Philomena, it was the emotional toll it took on both of us. It's hard to watch something you once believed in so strongly come apart at the seams. Scene fades to Philomena reflecting on the complexities of divorce. Philomena, divorce and legal separation can be fraught with emotion, conflict, and unexpected surprises, not unlike a dramatic soap opera or a thrilling game of Monopoly gone awry. But even in the midst of all the chaos and heartache, there's something undeniably human about the whole messy ordeal. Scene transitions to Philomena standing in a park, watching a couple arguing. Philomena, because when you strip away the legal jargon and the division of assets, what you're left with is the simple truth that love, like life, is unpredictable and ever-changing. And sometimes, the bravest and most difficult thing you can do is admit that it's time to let go and forge a new path. Scene cuts to Philomena raising a glass in a toast at the pub. Philomena, so here's to divorce and legal separation, the bittersweet end of one chapter and the beginning of another. May we all learn to navigate the twists and turns of love with grace, humor, and a healthy dose of perspective. And if all else fails, there's always another packet of crisps waiting at the pub. Scene fades out. Scene opens with Philomena examining a chalkboard with community property versus separate property written on it. Philomena, when it comes to divvying up the spoils of marriage, things can get a bit confusing, especially with concepts like community property and separate property. It's like trying to sort out who gets the last biscuit in a biscuit tin after a tea party, a sticky situation indeed. Scene transitions to Philomena speaking with a family law expert. Philomena, could you tell us the difference between community property and separate property? Expert, certainly, Philomena. Community property is typically any property acquired during the marriage, and both spouses have an equal ownership interest in it. Separate property, on the other hand, is property owned by a spouse before the marriage or acquired during the marriage by gift or inheritance. In a divorce, separate property is not subject to division. Scene cuts to Philomena playfully attempting to divide a large cake with community property written on it. Philomena, so, it's a bit like dividing a cake, some bits are for sharing, while others are reserved for the person who brought it to the party. Of course, deciding which bits belong to whom can be a bit of a challenge, especially when you're dealing with things like bank accounts, pension plans, and that beloved pet hamster. Scene transitions to Philomena discussing equitable distribution. Philomena, another approach to dividing property in a divorce is the concept of equitable distribution, which is a fancy way of saying that things should be divided fairly, but not necessarily equally. It's a bit like when you were a kid, and your mum would divvy up the sweets based on who'd been the best behaved. Scene cuts to Philomena interviewing an expert on equitable distribution. Philomena, so, how does equitable distribution work in practice? Expert, in an equitable distribution jurisdiction, the court will consider various factors, such as the length of the marriage, each spouse's contribution to the marital property, and the needs of each spouse, in order to determine a fair distribution of the assets. Scene shifts to Philomena pretending to be a judge, weighing a pair of scales. Philomena, of course, determining what's fair is always a bit subjective, much like deciding who gets the last roast potato at Sunday dinner. But with the help of skilled professionals and a bit of good old-fashioned common sense, most couples can reach a settlement that both parties can live with. Scene transitions to Philomena discussing alimony. Philomena, another aspect of divorce that can be a bit contentious is the concept of alimony, or as it's sometimes called, spousal maintenance. It's a bit like being asked to continue watering your neighbor's plants after they've moved away, not always the most appealing prospect. Scene cuts to Philomena speaking with an expert on alimony. Philomena, what's the rationale behind alimony, and how is it determined? Expert, alimony is intended to provide financial support to a spouse who may have been financially dependent during the marriage. Factors such as the length of the marriage, the earning capacity of each spouse, and their standard of living during the marriage are taken into account when determining alimony payments. Scene fades to Philomena reflecting on the complexities of property division and alimony. Philomena, at the end of the day, the world of family law can be a bit like a tangled ball of yarn, complex, convoluted, and full of knots. But with a bit of patience, perseverance, and perhaps a sense of humor, most couples can unravel the mess and find a way to move. Scene transitions to Philomena offering her satirical commentary on divorce and separation. Philomena, divorce and separation can be like trying to untangle a string of Christmas lights that you've haphazardly thrown into a box last year. It's a time-consuming, frustrating, and occasionally painful process. But, much like those twinkling lights, the end result can sometimes be surprisingly illuminating. Scene cuts to Philomena sitting on a park bench, observing a couple arguing. Philomena, it's a bit ironic, isn't it? We spend countless hours planning the perfect wedding, obsessing over minute details like the flavor of the cake and the choice of napkins. But when it comes to the other end of the marriage spectrum, divorce, we're often woefully unprepared. Scene shifts to Philomena walking through a wedding expo, looking at the various stalls. Philomena, perhaps we should have divorce expos, complete with stalls offering prenuptial agreements, custody arrangement workshops, and alimony calculators. There could even be a booth offering tips on how to break the news to your in-laws without causing a scene. Scene cuts to Philomena interviewing a couple going through a divorce. Philomena, so, what advice would you give to others who are about to embark on the roller coaster ride that is divorce? Divorcing spouse, I'd say communication is key. Even if things are tense, try to keep the lines of communication open and focus on finding a solution that works for both parties. Philomena, yes. Communication, the age-old remedy for all manner of relationship woes. Much like a cup of tea, it can often provide solace in even the most trying of circumstances. Scene transitions to Philomena reflecting on the topic of divorce and separation. Philomena, divorce and separation may not be the most pleasant of topics, but they are an unavoidable part of life for many couples. With a dash of patience, a pinch of humor, and a healthy dollop of communication, it is possible to navigate the choppy waters of family law and emerge on the other side, hopefully a bit wiser and perhaps even a touch more resilient. Scene fades out with Philomena walking away, contemplating the complexities of family law. I want the thing to be steeped in Philomena Cunk's aloof, irreverent, non-self-aware style of British documentary humor. She usually says something funny almost every sentence, so it will be a challenge to reproduce that, but the hypothetical scenarios she comes up with should be zany, and when she interviews experts, the experts can be better at providing the bulk of the facts and she can humorously respond to the professionals in her zany style. Consider the following section of the outline we wrote. 4 child-related issues. A. Child custody and visitation. Expand this section of the outline into a narrative in the style of Philomena Cunk's documentary TV show that is not less than 500 words and can include expert interviews and zany British examples. 3/3. Scene opens with Philomena standing in front of a playground. Philomena, when it comes to matters of the heart, there's one group that tugs at our heartstrings more than any other: children. And in the murky world of family law, they often find themselves caught in the middle of disputes between their parents. Scene shifts to Philomena interviewing a family law expert. Philomena, so, how does the law approach the delicate matter of child custody and visitation? Expert, well, the primary concern is always the best interests of the child. Factors like the parent's ability to provide a stable environment, their relationship with the child, and the child's own wishes are all taken into account when determining custody arrangements. Philomena, yes. The best interests of the child, a phrase that's bandied about more often than a beach ball at a seaside resort. But when emotions are running high, it can be difficult for parents to see beyond their own feelings and focus on what's truly best for their little ones. Scene transitions to Philomena visiting a support group for separated parents. Philomena, here, we find parents who are trying to navigate the often stormy seas of child custody and visitation. It's a bit like a game of tug-of-war, but instead of a rope, they are pulling at the delicate threads of their children's emotions. Scene cuts to Philomena interviewing a father from the support group. Philomena, what's been your experience with child custody and visitation? Father, it's been tough, to be honest. I love my kids more than anything, but their mum and I just couldn't make it work. We've had our ups and downs, but we're trying to put our differences aside and do what's best for the children. Philomena, that's very commendable. After all, children need both love and stability, much like a delicate souffle that requires both warmth and gentle handling to rise to its full potential. Scene shifts to Philomena observing a mother picking up her child for visitation. Philomena, visitation can be a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, it allows children to maintain a relationship with both parents. On the other, it can be a source of tension, with each parent vying for their child's affection like two seagulls squabbling over a discarded chip. Scene transitions to Philomena offering her humorous take on visitation. Philomena, perhaps we could devise a more harmonious system for child visitation. Maybe something like a relay race, where the child is handed off between parents in a seamless exchange, with minimal opportunities for bickering or squabbling. That way, everyone wins, especially the child. Scene fades out with Philomena pondering the complexities of child custody and visitation. Philomena, when it comes to child custody, there's more to it than meets the eye. You see, there are different types of custody, like a multi-layered trifle, each with its own unique blend of flavors and textures. First up, we have legal custody. Scene shifts to Philomena interviewing a family law expert. Philomena, so, legal custody, that's like when you have to put on a wig and argue your case in front of a judge, right? Expert, not exactly. Legal custody refers to the right and responsibility to make important decisions about a child's life. These decisions can include things like education, healthcare, and religious upbringing. Philomena, I see. So, it's like having the keys to the family car, but instead of driving, you're steering the course of your child's life. Quite the responsibility. Scene transitions to Philomena speaking with a separated couple who share legal custody. Philomena, this couple has been granted joint legal custody, which means they both have a say in their child's life. It's like a game of Simon Says, but instead of one person calling the shots, you have two, and the stakes are much higher than merely hopping on one foot. Father, it can be challenging at times, but we try to keep communication open and work together to make the best decisions for our child. Mother, that's right. It's important to put our personal differences aside and focus on what's best for our child. Philomena, a true testament to the power of compromise and teamwork, much like a perfectly choreographed dance routine, with each partner moving in harmony for the greater good of the performance. Scene shifts to Philomena observing a legal custody dispute in court. Philomena, but not all legal custody situations are as harmonious as our dancing duo. Sometimes, disagreements arise, and the court must intervene, like a stern headmaster called upon to settle a playground dispute. Scene cuts to Philomena interviewing a family court judge. Philomena, how do you approach cases where parents can't agree on legal custody? Judge, it's never an easy decision, but our primary concern is always the best interests of the child. We take into account the parents' ability to communicate and cooperate, as well as their willingness to put the child's needs above their own. Philomena, so, it's a bit like a game of chess, where each move must be carefully considered, and the ultimate goal is to ensure the well-being of the most precious piece on the board, the child. Scene transitions to Philomena offering her humorous take on legal custody. Philomena, perhaps we could simplify the process of legal custody by adopting a more democratic approach. Parents could present their proposals for child rearing, and the child could cast their vote, like a mini-referendum. Of course, the age-appropriate nature of the issues would have to be considered, and we might need to develop a child-friendly system of governance, complete with colorful pie charts and crayon-drawn manifestos. Scene fades out with Philomena pondering the complexities of legal custody. Philomena Cunk presents Physical Custody, A Tale of Two Homes. Scene, Philomena standing in front of a suburban neighborhood, gesturing to the houses. Philomena, if you've ever been to Britain, you know that we pride ourselves on our ability to separate things, just like our iconic tea bags. Today, we'll explore another kind of separation, physical custody. It's like a game of musical chess, but with children and houses. So, let's embark on this journey of learning about physical custody and possibly pick up a packet of crisps from the local pub. Scene, Philomena interviews a family law expert. Philomena, I'm here with Dr. Hosit, a family law expert who knows all about the ins and outs of physical custody. So, Dr. Hosit, what exactly is physical custody, and does it involve any actual physical activity? Dr. Hosit, physical custody refers to the living arrangements of a child when their parents are separated or divorced. It's about where the child resides and which parent is responsible for their day-to-day care. Philomena, so, it's like when I accidentally left my cat with my neighbor while I went on holiday, and they had to feed it and change its litter box. Dr. Hosit, well, not exactly, but it is about providing care and meeting the child's daily needs. Scene, Philomena imagines different living arrangements. Philomena, voiceover, in the world of physical custody, there are as many living arrangements as there are flavors of crisps. There's joint physical custody, where the child spends a significant amount of time with each parent. It's like when you can't decide between prawn cocktail and salt and vinegar crisps, so you have both. Then, there's sole physical custody, where one parent has the child all the time, and the other parent might only have visitation rights. It's a bit like having a monopoly on the prawn cocktail crisps, and your ex only gets to have a sniff of the bag. Scene, Philomena at a pub with a bloke. Philomena, so, I'm here with Dave, a bloke I met at the pub who's been through a custody battle. Dave, how did you and your ex handle physical custody? Dave, well, Philomena, it was a bit of a struggle at first. We tried joint custody, but the kids were always forgetting their school uniforms and homework at one house or the other. In the end, we settled on sole custody, with me having the kids on weekends and holidays. Philomena, sounds like you have a crisp packet's worth of time with your kids. Do you ever get a chance to see them outside of those times? Dave, yeah, sometimes we meet up for a cheeky pint and a packet of crisps at the pub, just like this. Scene, Philomena summarizes the segment. Philomena, so, there you have it. Physical custody is like the pickled onion of family law, sometimes sour, sometimes sweet, but always a bit crunchy. Join me next time as I continue to delve into the world of family law and attempt to understand why it's all so complicated. Philomena Cunk's Curious Chronicle of Visitation Rights. Scene, Philomena standing in front of a playground, gesturing to the swings and slides. Philomena, when it comes to family law, visitation rights are a bit like a Sunday roast. Everyone gets a portion, but some get more than others. Today, we are going to delve into the world of visitation rights, where parents spend quality time with their children, and the only thing that might be missing is a proper Yorkshire pudding. Scene, Philomena interviews a family law expert. Philomena, I'm here with Dr. Hosett again, our family law expert who knows everything about visitation rights, from the legal mumbo-jumbo to the emotional roller coasters. So, Dr. Hosett again, what are visitation rights, and do they come with a side of gravy? Dr. Hosett again, visitation rights are the legal rights a non-custodial parent has to spend time with their child. They are an important part of ensuring that both parents can maintain a relationship with the child, even if they are not living together. It's not really about gravy, but more about providing a stable environment for the child. Philomena, I see. So, it's like taking turns on the playground swings, making sure everyone gets a fair go. Scene, Philomena imagines different visitation scenarios. Philomena, voiceover, just like there's no one-size-fits-all jumper, visitation rights can vary from family to family. There's regular visitation, which might involve a parent seeing their child every other weekend or for a few hours during the week. It's like nibbling on a scone at tea time, a little taste of sweetness amidst the daily grind. Then, there's supervised visitation, where the non-custodial parent's time with the child is overseen by another adult. It's a bit like going to the cinema with your mom when you're a teenager. You get to see the film, but it's not quite as much fun with her watching your every move. Scene, Philomena at a park with a parent on a visitation day. Philomena, I'm here with Karen, a parent who has regular visitation rights with her son. Karen, how do you make the most of your time with your little lad? Karen, well, Philomena, we try to pack in as many fun activities as we can, like going to the park, having picnics, or just watching his favorite TV shows together. It's not always easy, but we make the best of the time we have. Philomena, that's lovely, Karen. And have you ever tried bribing him with a packet of crisps to make your visitation days even more enjoyable? Karen laughs. I think we prefer to focus on creating lasting memories rather than resorting to bribery. Scene, Philomena summarizes the segment. Philomena, there you have it, folks. Visitation rights are like the British weather, sometimes unpredictable, but always an essential part of our lives. Whether it's a day at the park or a quiet afternoon watching telly, These moments are crucial in maintaining the bond between parent and child. So, the next time you enjoy a packet of crisps, remember that visitation rights are just as important, even if they don't come with a side of gravy. Philomena Cunk's whimsical look at paternity and parental rights. Scene: Philomena standing outside a maternity ward, holding a toy baby doll. Philomena, when it comes to family law, paternity and parental rights are about as clear as a British summer's day. You never quite know what you're going to get. Today, we're going to explore the murky waters of establishing who's responsible for the little ones and how the law steps in to ensure everyone gets a fair share of nappy changing. Scene: Philomena interviews a family law expert on paternity and parental rights. Philomena, I'm here with Dr. Nota Lawyer, an expert in family law who's going to help us untangle the web of paternity and parental rights. So, Dr. Nota Lawyer, can you tell me how the law determines who's the daddy, or in some cases, the mummy? Dr. Nota Lawyer, well, Philomena, paternity is usually established through biological testing, such as DNA tests, or by the parents signing a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity. Parental rights can also be established through adoption or surrogacy arrangements. It's all about determining who has the legal responsibility to care for and make decisions on behalf of the child. Philomena, fascinating. So, it's a bit like a paternity-themed game show, where contestants try to match the right parent with the right child. Sounds like a great idea for a TV show, doesn't it? Scene: Philomena imagines a fictional paternity game show. Philomena, voiceover, just imagine the excitement as contestants spin the wheel of paternity, with potential outcomes like DNA match, adoption certificate and surrogate success. The stakes are high, but the rewards priceless. Scene: Philomena discusses parental rights with a couple. Philomena, I'm here with Dave and Sarah, a couple who've navigated the choppy waters of parental rights. Dave, you're the biological father of your child, while Sarah is the stepmother. How does the law treat you in terms of parental rights? Dave, well, Philomena, as the biological father, I have certain rights and responsibilities for our child. However, Sarah, as the stepmother, doesn't automatically have the same legal rights, even though she plays a significant role in our child's life. Sarah, that's right. We had to go through a legal process for me to gain parental responsibility, which includes making decisions about our child's education, medical care, and other important matters. Philomena, I see. So, it's like a parenting relay race, where you have to pass the baton of responsibility to make sure everyone gets a turn to participate. Scene: Philomena shares her amusing perspective on child-related issues in family law. Philomena, when it comes to child-related issues in family law, one can't help but wonder if it would be easier if children came with instruction manuals, complete with a troubleshooting guide for when they start throwing tantrums or refuse to eat their vegetables. Perhaps a chapter on navigating the legal complexities of parenthood would come in handy, too. But in the end, family law, like parenting itself, is a bit of a messy business. It's a mix of love, responsibility, and an endless supply of wet wipes. So, whether you're a biological parent, a step-parent, or a surrogate, remember that it takes a village to raise a child, and sometimes, that village includes a family lawyer or two. Scene: Philomena standing outside a courthouse, looking contemplative. Philomena, as we've wandered through the wild and untamed land of family law, I've come to realize that it's a bit like a never-ending soap opera. There's love, heartbreak, and just enough legal jargon to keep everyone on their toes. Looking back on our adventure, we've tackled the mysteries of marriage, dived into the depths of divorce, and even tiptoed around the tricky topic of children. We've seen how the law tries to make sense of life's messiest moments, sorting out who gets what, and who's responsible for whom. It's a bit like a legal game of musical chairs, except the chairs are assets, and the music is the sound of people arguing over who gets to sit where. Scene, montage of highlights from the episode, featuring Philomena's interactions with experts and her humorous commentary. Philomena, voiceover. We've met some fascinating characters along the way, like Dr. Notaloya, who shared his expertise on everything from paternity to prenuptial agreements. And who could forget Dave and Sarah, the couple navigating the maze of parental rights with grace, determination, and a healthy dose of humor. But perhaps the most important lesson we've learned is that family law, like life itself, is complicated. It's a tangle of emotions, responsibilities, and legal paperwork that would make even the most hardened bureaucrat's head spin. Scene, Philomena standing in front of a sign that reads Family Law, the end of the road. Philomena, so, as we reach the end of our journey through the world of family law, I can't help but feel a sense of awe at the sheer complexity of it all. It's like trying to untangle a ball of wool after it's been through a spin cycle, or deciphering a cryptic crossword written in a language you don't speak. But, despite the challenges, family law serves an important purpose. It's there to help us navigate the rocky shores of human relationships, ensuring that everyone gets a fair shake in the grand game of love and life. Scene, Philomena with a mischievous smile. Philomena, and now, as we bid farewell to the world of family law, I leave you with a tantalizing teaser for our next adventure. Join me, Philomena Cunk, as I attempt to conquer the next great legal challenge, the world of criminal law. Scene, montage of Philomena in various situations related to criminal law, such as standing outside a prison, interviewing a law enforcement officer, and examining a mock crime scene. Philomena, voiceover. Will I be able to crack the code of criminal justice, or will I find myself hopelessly entangled in a web of laws, regulations, and red tape? Tune in next time to find out, as we embark on another thrilling chapter in the saga of Philomena Cunk passes the bar exam. Scene, Philomena walking away from the courthouse, waving to the camera. Philomena, until then, remember, the law may be complicated, but so is love. And sometimes, that's half the fun. Goodbye for now, and see you on the other side.
The Egyptians believed the most significant thing you could do in your life was die. My hair looks fucking shit. Before Snapchat, hills were the most efficient way to distribute dick pics to a wide audience. Pompeii was so advanced it had its own volcano, which is Latin for angry hill. Yet despite all this attention to detail, a quick inspection of his back half reveals he doesn't have an anus. As well as boring, these are also shit by today's standards. But do we know if he came or not? Like, just the same as an average man. Like, about a tablespoon. Mother Teresa said give, but give until it hurts, which is possibly the sexiest thing a nun's ever said. Luckily, it wasn't long until a charity came along with a name that was very easy to say. Comic relic, and who thought it was Ein Lord of Scheisel, was German thinker Karl Marx. It's hard to tell, but if you look closely at this photograph, you might notice he had a beard. By unveiling the controversial poll tax, a tax some people call poll, and they were furious. Russia changed its name to USA, or sometimes study is complete works. And here in this garden in Kent, Darwin saw an apple fall from a tree and wondered if there was a monkey up there. I'm entering a cave, not by mistake or because I'm a wolf,